Hey, this is Steve Bloom, and you are listening to the Geekcast Radio Network.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Cinema Geeks. I am one of your Cinema Geeks Optimus Solo, and joining me today for this very special year-end record is Hard Candy Mandy. Hello.
Hey.
And year-end in the sense of 2016 films, not as in December 31st. Movie Revolt Dan. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
It's not going too bad. And hard at work, cram session went into full effect. How we doing, Matt?
I'm tired.
So today, like we teased in last week's episode, this is the culmination of our 2016 film look. So we're going to be going through our top 10 films of 2016. Hopefully you guys enjoyed last week's episode when we talked about our different movie awards. If you haven't checked that out, make sure you do so after you listen here and find out some fun and creative awards that we were able to hand out for various things about 2016 films. A lot of times when we do this and we kind of do our top 10 of the year, it seems like then we almost immediately transition into the next year, and then, I don't know about Amanda and Dan and how you guys feel, but then it's like you just start immediately watching the next year's films and very rarely get to look back and kind of take a breath and see what happened once you did catch up with all of the films that you didn't quite catch up with in the calendar year. So we thought it would be fun to kind of take a look back at 2015, the list we did last year, and see what exactly happens over the course of a year. You know, you watch more films, you sit on things, you have time to think about the films that you did watch. You don't have to deal with the fact that maybe there were some that you watched immediately before doing it that were fresh in your mind. So we wanted to see how much they stay the same, how much things change. So that's how we're going to start today, is a quick look back at our 2015 list to see exactly how things stand a year later. Amanda, let's start with you. Ladies first, as always, with the Cinema Geeks. So when we go back to your 2015 list, we had number 10, you had Danny Collins. 9, you had Star Wars: Force Awakens. 8 was Testament of Youth. Your number 7 was Infinitely Polar Bear. Then you had Sicario, Chappie, Spotlight, and your top 3 were Brooklyn, What We Do in the Shadows, and Suffragette. A year later, is the list the same? Is it different? What has happened?
I think for the most part, I would keep it the same. That was a pretty solid list, I think. One thing I think we caught up with late, or maybe after we did the record, was Legend.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Hardy and Tom Hardy. I really did like that movie, and I wish we would have done a review or something on it, because it definitely was super cool seeing two sides of Tom Hardy at once. And it was a fun and gritty story, so that might have made it somewhere in there. Also, The Room. I'm not really sure if I would want to put it on my list, but it was a solid movie. I just don't know if I want to put something that was like that disturbed by on my list. So. You
and I have completely opposite rationale when it comes to those types of movies, I think.
You weren't disturbed by the shit that happened in that movie?
Right, but I'm just saying, like, being disturbed about a film almost makes it more likely to end up on my list, I think, than it does to not. But I think it's, again, how you take movies and what you kind of want your experience, if you want to escape from reality or if you want a heavy dose of it.
Well, like, with this list, we just watched Birth of a Nation. Super powerful movie, really solid film, but I refuse to put that on my top 10, not because it wasn't a good movie, but just because I was so disturbed by it that, like, I don't know, I don't want to think about it again. So
yeah, so the disturbing part, like, for me, doesn't play in a factor. It's more, I think there's problems with that film overall, which would be why it wouldn't make my list. But it's never, the disturbing part for some reason doesn't bother me ever. But
well, you're a freaking weirdo. I mean, there's things on my list that aren't. It's not all happy, fun movies either. I'm not saying that I'm not going to put a movie on there that isn't a heavy dose of reality or emotion or anything like that. But there's just some movies that are just too much for me, and they are disturbing, and I can't put them on a list like this. I can't do it.
What about, if you're looking back at your 2015 list, is there a film that you have not thought about since then? Is there a film that has kind of dropped out of your mind that maybe would fall if you were rethinking it?
I think one that I forgot about was A Testament of Youth, which I really, really liked, actually, and was one that we caught up later in the year. Maybe that's why it was kind of towards the end, and then the transition happened into the next year, and I was already geared up for that.
So what do you think that, like, does that for you affect the way you think about a movie if it does kind of fall out of your mindset and you kind of forget that it exists a little? Does that lessen the impact that you think it had overall, and was it more so just something you liked in the moment versus something that stuck with you? Like, you obviously still are talking or have thoughts about The Room.
I think it just makes me want to rewatch it again to see what I connected with and that I really liked from it, because I have memories of it, but it's, like I said, it was kind of late in the year and we were already transitioning, so it wasn't something that I was able to really internalize because it was cram session time and we had all these films we were getting into. But I definitely remember the impact it had on me and the vibes that I got from it, and I liked it. So.
Interesting. Dan, I know you were in a cram session of your own a year ago as you were trying to catch up with a lot of the 2015 movies towards the end because of your busy 2015 schedule. So now that you've had a chance to catch up with a bunch of them, on streaming or, video, etc., how has that affected your list? And do you want to go down what it was originally last year?
Sure. So last year, it hasn't changed a lot. Like last year, mine 10 were starting at 10. The movie with the most pretentious name ever made, but Pigeon Sat on a Park Bench While Reflecting on Existence was my number 10.
Every time you say that name.
Yeah. The Hateful Eight was 9, then What We Do in the Shadows, Ex Machina, Creed, The Revenant, Star Wars, The Force Awakens, Slow West, Mad Max, and then The Martian was my number 1 movie of the year. I did end up, and when that happened, there were a bunch of 2016 films. 15 films I didn't check or see yet, and still, after listening to Amanda's list, I'm like, wow, there's still some more I haven't seen. But one of the biggest ones that I missed that is now firmly in the top without, not in the top, but probably around 2 or 3 on that list would be Spotlight. I love movies about journalism. Investigation, and I love All the President's Men, and that has a lot in common with Spotlight. So once I caught that, I was very excited and enjoyed it a great deal. 2 that didn't necessarily make it but came very close would probably be The End of the Tour and Truth, which is another movie about the news and journalism and investigation with Dan Rather and Rob Redford, which I think the movie got overall negative reviews, but I liked it a good deal.
That was good, yeah.
And then there's just one documentary that kind of I ended up finding very fascinating, which is Welcome to Leith, which I still think is on Netflix, which is like this documentary of this group of white nationalists go into this small Dakota town and try to kind of take it over, and it's kind of insane. It's really fascinating, and that ended up probably being my favorite documentary of last year. So.
Nice. I think for me, if you look at my top 10 last year, I don't think a lot has changed, maybe the order of a few of them, but I don't think I would drop anything out of my top 10. If you look at my 11 through 20, there would be a lot of changes, though. That's where I think the most movement would make for me over the course of the year. Last year, my top 10 was What We Do in the Shadows, Brooklyn, Infinitely Polar Bear, Mad Max, Hateful Eight, Spotlight, Star Wars, Z for Zachariah, Ex Machina, and Beasts of No Nation. I think just looking at those 10, what would happen is Beasts of No Nation probably would slip a little bit. I think over time, Ex Machina and Spotlight have been the 2 that have stuck the most with me. So I think those would probably be my number 1 and my number 2. And then after that, it would pretty much follow suit. I think as far as ones that I saw after the fact, we saw Carol after that. And I think that would sneak into my top 20, probably around number 11 or 12.
Are we talking about 11 and 12? We're talking about 1 through 10?
I'm just saying it would be really close. We saw 99 Homes after the fact, which I think might crack my top 20-25 somewhere in there. And I think Revenant would have moved up significantly. It was still in my top 30 last year, but I think it would definitely be in my top 20 to 15 right now. I think the ones that kind of dropped a little bit too, Bridge of Spies, Love and Mercy, Inside Out, all would drop a little bit to make room for those 3, Carol, Revenant, and 99 Homes, kind of making up some ground because they've stuck with me a little bit more than some of those other films. But I was interested. I thought there might be more changes, but my top 10 is just a little bit more about the ordering and kind of which ones I think resonated with me over the course of a year and kind of stuck with me when it comes to that. Matt, you weren't with us last year on the record for the top 10 films of 2015. Curious to see what were some of your favorite films from 2015, since you didn't get a chance to highlight them then. What ones would you highlight now that you saw from 2015?
So my lists on these things are always a little bit different because I don't go to the theaters nearly as much as everyone else does. That said, 2015 resonated with me probably more than 2016 ever will. I would say there are at least 2 of the movies I saw in 2015 made it in my top 20 all-time movies. Like, that's how much I loved 2015. But some of my favorites in no particular order: Fury Road, Force Awakens, Inside Out, Age of Ultron was good, even if it wasn't as good as the first one. I also happened to see Minions, I guess, and The Hateful Eight, which I've got very mixed feelings on. And then Jupiter Ascending, which should have been 3 movies, but instead was one terrible mess.
It was one terrible mess. That is a good summation of that film. Yeah, there was definitely a lot of big blockbusters. I think the blockbusters did better in 2015 overall. Maybe I'd have to kind of go back, I think, a little bit, but it seems like 2016 has had the stigma of blockbusters that might not have lived up to the full potential. Did you have which one was your favorite out of all those, Matt?
It's not fair if there's a Star Wars. But say if we're discounting The Force Awakens, which I would probably put a lot higher than most people would put it in my Star Wars favorites, it's got to be Fury Road. Like, Fury Road, I saw Fury Road 2 or 3 times within the first week of when I saw it. Like,
that's your problem, Matt. You spend too much time going back to the theater for one movie and not going to see more movies.
I mean, between Fury Road and The Force Awakens, I did go to the theater 7 or 8 times, just those 2, but I really liked them, guys.
And they are an experience that is obviously better on the big screen than maybe some of the other ones that will be just as good on a smaller screen later on. So
sure.
Can't blame you there. So. All right, well, shifting our attention a little bit to 2016, a lot of people have made different comments on what kind of year it was and how it stacks up to some of the more recent years. Dan, let's start with you. What did 2016 end up looking like for you, and how high are you on your top 10? Are you loving it? Are you a little skeptical of a few of them, or how did it all turn out for you?
Actually, as I caught up with a bunch this last few weeks, I'm pretty impressed with 2016. It wasn't looking good there for a very long time. It's like that game that's awful for 3 quarters, but the ending's amazing. It's like, wow, and so you kind of leave on a high note. And there were certain aspects of the year that I think weren't great. Like, it wasn't a great year for blockbusters as a whole. The summer was kind of dull, but I think there was a huge variety of different really great films, and I'm really actually quite happy with my top 10, and it became very difficult to fit them into 10. So surprisingly, I thought, a month or 2 ago I'd be like, wow, 2016 is kind of dull, but as I was looking at it as a whole, I'm like, wow, this is actually pretty impressive. I saw about 100 movies this year, and about 70 of them I gave a positive review of, which is a pretty good batting average. So
yeah, I think the biggest thing that struck me is because I was kind of under the same impression as we were kind of making our way through, like, yikes, this is going to be a rough year, and you're hearing that from a lot of other circles and people out on the Twitter, Facebook, and different podcasts, etc. But when I was going through and looking at all the scores that I gave different films, if you looked at 2015, I think I probably, not just positive, but like significant, like movies I would recommend, there might have been maybe 30 last year, 30, 35 at the most that I was high on. When I was doing it this year, I'm in the 50s. Like, I'm at least 55 deep, where I would still feel completely good about recommending any of those 55 films to people. That's how much I liked them. So I think overall, when you kind of add it all up, there was a lot more good movies that kind of found a way to theaters or on demand, et cetera, that made it there. So I think overall for the year, I feel pretty good about it. In my top 10 specifically, I'm pretty happy with that too. I mean, yes, there's a few films that I haven't seen yet that maybe would be able to sneak in there and grab a spot, but I like my top 10, and like I said, I like the majority of films that came out. I think that, like you did, I had more positive reaction to films than negative. So I think 2016 might be getting a bad rap just for more of the mainstream blockbuster films that didn't live up to what some people thought was their potential. Amanda, what do you think about 2016?
I definitely agree with the blockbuster aspect not doing so well this year. I had really high hopes for a few of the comic book movies and some of these blockbuster type films that were supposed to be coming out, and I thought for sure that they would be making my top 10, and you guys will probably see that that wasn't the case. Not that I didn't exactly, I didn't dislike them, but I was more moved or blown away by some other films that I wasn't expecting.
All right. Matt, how do you feel about your top 10 now compared to 48 hours ago?
Well, it's funny, as Kevin's implying, inferring. As of yesterday, I had been to the theaters in 2016 10 times. Discounting 2015 movies, because I saw Force Awakens twice and Hateful Eight all in January. But I'd been to for 2016 movies, I had been to the theater 10 times, and 2 of those were Rogue One, so it's like I didn't even have a top 10 list, because I've only been to the theater 9 times. And so today I took the day off work and crammed a couple more blockbuster movies in, because that's what you do, rather than go for the cool ones that Dan's going to have on his list. You go for the blockbusters that everyone's disappointed in. So, I don't know, I guess I'm not super pleased with my list, but I at least managed to get Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad off of it before we recorded tonight, and that's an accomplishment to me.
We're happy for you to be able to accomplish that, because otherwise we're going to have to pull some shenanigans with our rules and allow you to do some strange things when it came to your top 10 list. So I think another thing worth noting is, I mean, obviously there's a billion films, so there's a ton that we haven't seen. There's no way you can see them all, but I think there's always a few that kind of rise above as far as what people are talking about, and we should highlight those so people aren't upset when they, or at least that they understand the purpose for them not appearing in our top 10. So for Amanda and myself, I think the biggest ones that we missed so far have not been able to see that are getting a lot of buzz, whether it be in the award circuits or the different podcast circles. Moonlight we have not seen yet. We did not see The Handmaiden, Certain Women, Fences, Neon Demon, Jackie, 20th Century Women, Sing, Edge of 17, or Nocturnal Animals, and Silence and The Founder. I mean, those are just being released, I think, in the next week or two, so most people haven't seen those, so I don't think that's kind of a fair to even kind of put them in this group. But Dan, what about you? What are some of the biggest regrets so far that you haven't seen?
It looks like, for me, Moonlight and La La Land are probably the 2 biggest ones I haven't seen. Silence, as you mentioned, Edge of 17, and trying to think if those are the ones that kind of come to my mind of the big ones that I've heard a lot of great things for, but I have not checked out myself.
All right, so with that out of the way, anybody else want to throw out any caveats or any criteria or anything that they want to note before we start getting into our actual numbers? Amanda?
Not really, no.
You're good to go?
Nothing special.
All right, Dan, anything else that we need to throw out before we start the countdown?
No, I think we're good.
All right, Matt, why don't you start us off here? What eked into number 10, kicking out Batman vs. Superman?
All right, so my number 10 pick is not a movie I wanted to go to, nor was it particularly thrilling, though it was, it was a decent, wholesome movie. We went with my my wife's aunt, because she likes to go to kids' movies every couple of months, and so she'll take us to some kids' movies. That's Pete's Dragon, the remake of the classic Pete's Dragon.
That was much better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I mean, it was predictable. It was kid stuff, but it was I guess less predictable than I would have assumed, and it's not unenjoyable, and it's not like I didn't tear up a couple of times, especially towards the end. But at the same time, it's not a wowing movie by any means.
No, I can see that, but it was like there was a group of those, like BFG and Pete's Dragon, that I just had no interest in seeing. And when we caught up with them, I was pleasantly surprised by that. I mean, you had a positive reaction to Pete's Dragon too, right?
Yeah, Pete's Dragon is my number 11. I didn't think I was really going to enjoy it, but I ended up really investing in it, and cried my freaking eyes out like the entire fucking movie. I was in like some state of tears.
That's your theme for this
The
year.
entire it really is. Like I don't know if I'm just getting old and hormonal or like what it is. I'm just crying about everything. And I don't know. It had a lot of heart, and I felt really really bad for like Pete and his struggle, and I felt awful for his dragon. Elliot was super cool looking, and I thought the relationships that built up were super good, and I think it was a solid film.
All right. Well, that's how we start off, and you said that was number 11, so why don't we just transition right into your number 10?
All right, well, this is going to be the one I'm going to get the most hate for. So I'm just gonna,
How many times are you going to say that?
Just once.
Okay.
Just once. And I really wasn't sure if I wanted to put this in my top 10. A, because I know I'm going to get some crap for it. And B, I think what actually changed my mind and had me put it on the list was I needed something that was a little bit more lighthearted because some of my stuff gets a little serious. So my number 10 is Ghostbusters. Ton of fun in the theater. Loved all the characters. Holtzman is like my spirit animal now, and I really thought like the group dynamic was awesome, and the cameos were super cool. Chris Hemsworth, pretty to look at, but really didn't do anything for the film. Yeah, I think I had a really positive reaction to it.
Yeah, I didn't understand the amount of hate that some people wanted to spew towards that. I think a lot of it was coming before they even saw the film, but I thought it did a good job of what it was trying to do. I was pleasantly surprised with that one, just like Pete's Dragon. I thought they both exceeded my expectations. So, Ghostbusters at your number 10. I'll go next. My number 10, my like 9 through 12 are almost interchangeable, so I spent that probably the most time trying to decide which two were gonna make it into the actual countdown. And this one did not get as well reviewed as you might think when we're talking top 10 type films, but for some reason I enjoyed it throughout. I'm gonna go with the film Allied as my number 10. I just thought it was an interesting story. I thought it was pretty well done for the whole part. There was kept you guessing. There was some suspense there, obviously. I thought the performances, especially from the main two there, were phenomenal. I think they did a good job of kind of playing those parts and not revealing anything too early. And I enjoyed the film. It's also another one, like you said, Amanda, that has some heart-wrenching moments, and some. I kind of like films that do that, where they put you into a situation where you have to question how you would react, or what choices would you make in this given situation where you're confronted with something like the character that Brad Pitt plays is confronted with, and how do you choose how to go about your decisions once you're at that stage. So it's something that's easy to say, if you're not in that situation, and it's easy for you to talk about, I would do this or I would do that. But when you find yourself somehow unintentionally involved and into that situation like he is, I think it becomes a whole new ballgame. So I'm trying to like dance around a little bit because I don't want to give anything away. But I thought Allied was far better than it got credit for. So it's my number 10. Dan, what about you?
I have not seen Allied, so that's interesting. I missed that one. So
a lot of people did, and it did not get good reviews. So I don't blame most people for not being on the radar.
So I think this will become interesting really quickly, because I'm pretty sure my number 10 was hated at least by one person on the podcast, and my number 10 is American Honey.
Oh, Jesus.
When you made that tweet, I was like, which film does he think I hate? I just assumed that I'm the hater.
It really is just Amanda.
Yeah, so American Honey is the type of movie that I think will have as many people, more people that will detract than attract. It's got a nearly 3-hour running time. It's handheld documentary style. It's use of unprofessional actors, and the fact that a lot of the characters could be aggressively annoying in one way or another, unlikable. But for me, I was kind of transfixed by this portal to the subculture that we're kind of brought into. And I thought this is Andrea Arnold's first film, and it was just kind of a raw style, like I mentioned, very documentary-esque, that there's a sense of realism, especially with the use of unprofessional actors. It's a little muddies the water a little bit between what's real, what's fake, and obviously certain scenes that I think were shot guerrilla style, and I'm thinking I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, but Sacha Laney, it was her first time as an actor, and I think the director used that, like, her novice to the world of acting as a benefit, because she has a sense of, like, authenticity and that it's challenging to get for, I think, a professional actress. Kind of reminds me of something like the Quinjanelle Wallet. Wow, I pronounced it. John Travolta that name. But Beast of the Southern Wild, kind of similar to how that used a lot of unprofessional actors. And although Shia LaBeouf may have had the worst hairstyle in movie history, and he may be an actual crazy person in real life, he can actually act when given the opportunity. He was great in Fury. He was great in this. And I know it's kind of cliche, but even though it was 3 hours, I never felt the length, and I just kind of enjoyed the journey that it took me on. So it's my number 10.
I think he was very important to the film too, as like a presence to hold it all together amongst a lot of, obviously, like you said, inexperienced actors, etc. I think his role was crucial. I mean, not just thematically, but from an aesthetic standpoint too. And I think he was very good as far as the acting goes. But I'm going to let Amanda talk first, because she had the strongest reaction out of the two of us when it came to American Honey.
Oh God, why are you making me talk about this again? No offense to Dan. I mean, I'm glad that somebody could really get something solid out of this, but I couldn't even get into it because the filming style was making me so motion sick and like nauseous that it gave me a headache, and like I had like a physical negative reaction to this, so I couldn't get involved at all, and all I was seeing were these reactions and choices and decisions that just were ridiculous, and like I myself was not an angel when I was growing up. What? I probably should be dead like a couple times over, because I've made some stupid decisions too. Like, we all have gotten in some a convertible with 4 older cowboys and decided to eat the fucking tequila worm, but
not done that.
Just some of the decisions of their actions. An example would be the first house that the girl and Shia LaBeouf were trying to sell the magazines to, and how she acted when like bitch, you ain't got no money, you need to go out there and make that paper, and all you're doing is acting like a fool. And so I just didn't understand many of the motivations, and I was pissed like from the get-go when she kind of just like dump these kids off and bail. Like, I get it, like she was trying to just have a life, you know what I mean? But those were her brothers and sisters, and like, what about them? Like, if she was the one that was left to take care of them and she dumps them off, they were already jumped off on her, like, what's gonna happen to them? So I was already pissed at her like from the beginning. So I don't know, I just couldn't get behind it.
Yeah, I think the filming style was something that kind of turned you off maybe right from the get-go. I wasn't as thrown off by the filming style. I did find it unnecessary at some points, the amount of shakiness, or not necessarily, it wasn't necessarily shaky, but the amount of jumping around that is going on. I get that it kind of adds to the aesthetic that they're going for, but at times I think they could have done it in a less jarring way. But I do think there's a lot that you can unpack from this film. I think there's a lot that you can kind of, I know it's not necessarily one that you want to revisit a lot, since, like Dan said, it's like a 3-hour film, but I think there is a lot of layers to peel back if you wanted to go there and kind of get to what was being presented in kind of that time, and that location, the setting, and what it was saying about our culture in that situation, and as well as the coming of age things and stuff like that. So I agree with Dan. I never necessarily, it's hard not to realize it's 3 hours, but it didn't necessarily drag for me from a thematic standpoint, because I was still interested to see what was going to be the ramifications of certain decisions that people were making. And it didn't always go the way you thought it was going to go. Like, she put herself in a lot of situations that could have ended up very much worse than they did at times. So it kept you guessing enough where I was intrigued by it. And I think there is more there to unpack that it would make it a valuable pick. So I don't necessarily have as adverse of a reaction to that one as you did. So
what about all the floppy wieners that was going on? Any adverse reaction to that? That guy was always
Game of Thrones fans. It's like
They
fun.
were
Right. Game of Thrones has numbed me. I'm sorry.
It was just like flopping it out all over the place.
So, all right, those are all of our number 10 picks. Let's go back to Matt. Let's start our number 9 picks with your choice, Matt.
All right. My number 9 is X-Men Apocalypse. Probably the weakest one of all of the recent X-Men movies that actually have X-Men on them. Like I haven't seen the Wolverine or any of those. But like it's not Days of Future Past by a lot, and it's not X-Men First Class even. But there were some pretty good things in it, and it was interesting enough, and I saw it, and that's good enough to get it on the list. I thought I didn't realize it was Oscar Isaac playing Apocalypse until like one of the close-ups in the last like 20 minutes of the movie, maybe 25. Like I was just like, oh, that's that Poe Dameron guy, and like that. But like, I don't know. That's like the most memorable moment I have with that movie. Well,
What about all the deaths? The opening scene with all the crazy like power mutant crazy kills that happened. You remember that? In the pyramid scene?
Oh, I remember that. Now that you bring it up, I do remember the pyramid scene. The other one that I actually is more memorable than either of those was Magneto's return to evil. I thought was really well done, even if that probably should have come later because it was just like Magneto's not evil for 1 minute. Because it was just like he was pretty much evil at the end of the last movie, and then he shows up and he's not evil, and then he is. But
Right.
other than that, But the crazy Egyptian scene was good, even if I didn't remember it. You know, what is it? 6 months later.
Yeah, I think you have them in the right order. I don't think it holds up to like First Class or Days of Future Past for sure. We can definitely agree about that. I think there was some memorable things about that. I do like the backstory they give us with Magneto, but I think with Magneto, it's become a sticking point for a lot of people. I mean, how many times do we want to see that he's bad and that Xavier or somebody talks him into being good for a minute and he helps out and then he's bad again? Like, you got to be very careful when you're doing that over and over again to make it still compelling each time. So, but I thought there was some crazy memorable scenes from him, with his family, etc. So, I don't think it was nearly the worst comic book film that came out this year. So it does have that going for it. Amanda, number 9.
Number 9 has already been talked about, Kevin. That's Allied. I really thought
We have to put a little chime in for a crossover pick.
I didn't want to say anything and
No, I know.
just
It's the
gone.
first time we've had a crossover. There we go. Continue.
Okay, so I thought the players here were super excellent. Big name cast, really, and for the main 2 stars, and I think they did a really awesome job of setting up a chemistry, and it wasn't just like all of a sudden we're in love. It was this kind of not necessarily like a slow burn, but you see it kind of happening, and then you see like the spark take off, and I really like that, and it set in motion, or it set the tone for their love throughout the film too, and it really made you sit and ask yourself what you would do in the situation, and you really see that if it hadn't been wartime, how different things would have been for them in their life, and how tragically some things played out, and I was pretty moved by it.
Obviously, I agree.
Yes, sir.
All right. For my, Dan, you mentioned with your number 10 that it was going to be one that at least one person on the panel did not appreciate. Don't worry, I'm going to do that multiple times. So this is going to be one of them that I think Amanda will not appreciate as well.
Oh, God.
So for my number 9, I'm going to go with Everybody Wants Some. The Linklater, what do they call it? Spiritual sequel to Dazed and Confused. Dazed and Confused is one of my favorite films from my high school days, probably. I just loved almost everything about Dazed and Confused, and now you're going to kind of put a similar thing and then kind of throw some sprinklings of baseball around it, even if it didn't have much to do with the overall story. But I just think Everybody Wants Some does what it's trying to do very well, and I think you do get a lot more. Dan, you said this on Twitter. It's the year of the coming of age films, I guess, because there was a ton of them, and you could lump this one in with that group. But I just think there's some good deal of humor. There's healthy dose of reality and authenticity when it comes to what's being portrayed here. I just think it's a film that could be watched more than once. It's a film that could. I don't think it necessarily. Too many people know about Linklater at this point that it's not going to be like a cult film like you would maybe consider Dazed and Confused back when it came out. But I just think there's a lot to love here. I don't know if you were to kind of pair it up against all of the coming of age films that came out in 2016, if it would stack up to some of them. Like I said, I have not seen Moonlight and then a couple of those other ones, but for me at this point, it rose above quite a few of them, and just was a fun experience from beginning to end. And I think anybody that either played sports or went to college or had to deal with, just went through that time period, will find something to relate to.
Only if you're a dude, okay?
That's what I say. I don't know how well it would resonate with the female audience, and obviously it didn't resonate with you at all.
Because I went to college and I played sports and I dealt with a lot of stuff that was not in this movie.
Right. So it's not going to relate to not everyone's going to relate to it, but for me, there was enough there that I could, even if I didn't experience it, I knew other people that experienced it or witnessed it or, kind of vicariously saw some of these type of things happening. So it was relatable for me and an enjoyable experience overall. So Everybody Wants Some was good enough for me to be in the top 10. Amanda, anything you'd like to say?
Nope.
All right. So count that as the second time that we're making Amanda mad, and it will not be the last.
You guys are missing out on all of the horrible faces that I'm making over here.
That's all right. That's all right. Dan, what do you have coming up at your number 9?
I did enjoy Everybody Wants Some. It was in my top 10 for quite a while until I caught up with a few and it hurt me, but I had to bump it out. But my number 9 is a movie I feel it's getting I hear really no one talking about, and I checked it on Amazon Prime and enjoyed it a great deal. And, well, enjoy is the wrong word, but it is called The Club, or El Club, from director, I'm going to butcher this name, Pablo Loren? Maybe that's not that bad, I guess. I don't know. But the story surrounds this small home that exiled priests are forced to basically reside in. It's almost like a pseudo jail that is headed by a nurse who's also has her troubled past. And if Spotlight was like this analytical takedown of the moral corruption of the Catholic Church, this is the emotional aspect of that. It's a Chilean film, so that there is a certain culture to it, and it actually has one of the best ensemble casts, I think, of the year. Just the acting prowess that's throughout is pretty powerful. And it's what's odd about it too is that you kind of you learn about these characters. You really don't know exactly why they're there, and they start out. There's also there's almost a charminess to them. There's a likability, and even though you kind of have an idea that they've done some really awful things, and then as the story progresses, that starts to come out. And also, within the first 15 minutes, there's this sequence that is probably, if I were to look at sequences that stuck with me the most, it's certainly there. And I will say it is called, I would guess categorize it as a yelling confession as someone comes to the home to kind of reveal his issues with someone who's new to the home. So currently streaming on Prime, like I mentioned, it's certainly, not the most enjoyable film to watch. It's hard to sit through at times because of, as we talked about, the emotional impact it does have. But I thought it was really well crafted and also has a really effective score as well. So it's my number 9, The Club.
Interesting. Yeah, I've not even heard of that one, so I'll have to jot that one down and put it on the list. Amanda?
I'm watching that, or I finished the Exorcist TV series on Fox, and there's a couple scenes where you see one of these priest who is an exorcist who had a couple failed exorcisms was actually living in one of these homes, and I didn't know that it existed, but they all are wearing these plain gray sweatsuits, and they all have just a room, and the door has to be open, and everything's monitored, and they can't just come and go when they want. I didn't even know that things like that existed. So
interesting. All right, Matt, back to you for your number 8 pick.
All right, my number 8 pick, honestly, I would have expected to be a little bit higher. I'm just glad it happened because it's a weird one. And that's Doctor Strange. I wasn't a huge fan of Doctor Strange comics growing up. They're they're a slog sometimes. As an adult, I can appreciate them. Like, one of my favorite stories is a Doctor Strange, Doctor Doom team-up story where they have some mutual understanding by the end of it, but they're still the same characters. And I didn't know what to expect from this movie. It's a movie I would have never thought would ever come out. Like, he's huge in the Marvel universe, but at the same time, he's not huge. Like, who buys Doctor Strange comics? He rarely has a monthly issue. The movie was fun. It was funny. It was interesting. They did really weird things. They did a great job with the CG that they used. Like, it kept me interested, entertained. Even if it's not like top 5 material, I still enjoyed it enough to put it above X-Men Apocalypse.
Yeah, I think a couple things that film had going for it specifically. I think, like you said, with the CG or some of the visual effects, we got to see stuff that we've not seen in any other comic book film with the kind of the interdimensional, or I don't know how you want to term that, but as they're kind of going through things, the fights, almost like a Matrix type innovation there with some of those fights. And I also think Mads Mikkelsen made a pretty good comic book villain, where normally that's one of the kind of soft spots in a lot of these Marvel films, is the villain a lot of people don't think holds their weight, and I think Mads Mikkelsen did in this one. So I like those aspects. I think it's one of the better comic book films we got this year. I would probably put it in the top 3 as far as the comic book films that came out this year. Amanda, any thoughts on Doctor Strange?
I think that I really didn't have super high hopes because I thought it looked too much like Inception in like the trailers and stuff, and I'm like, I don't really know if I'm gonna like this because I didn't know much about Doctor Strange either, so I didn't have anything backing like my interest. But I think that I was entertained. I wasn't like clamoring for another movie or anything, but I think I'll see it, the sequel if it comes out, and I think Mads Mikkelsen did a super cool job too. So.
Dan, what did you think about my statement as far as Doctor Strange being in the top 3 for comic book films this year? Do you think so, or not quite?
I think so. I enjoyed it a lot. I mean, I know the argument is that it kind of sticks to that Marvel formula, and I know there's a lot of comparisons to Iron Man, and that's really kind of the classic superhero origin story. But I thought what it added to it visually and performance-wise and character-wise, I liked a lot. Matt's right. Like, most Doctor Strange comics aren't very successful. There is a really great one on right now by Jason Aaron that I would recommend. I think that's really kind of like put the character in a really interesting direction. But I think visually it may be Marvel's best film, and I think it has one of the best, if not the best ending, maybe outside of the Avengers, just because it's completely different, really smart, and kind of a cool way to end it that felt very much like a Doctor Strange comic.
All right, so all of us feeling pretty good about Doctor Strange. Amanda, how are you feeling about your number 8?
Feeling pretty freaking depressed about number 8 here, but it was definitely a super powerful movie, and it was difficult for me to choose which order that my 8 and 9 were going to go in, but my number 8 is A Light Between Oceans. It had a very similar tone to Allied, where there was this really heavy choice to make, and truth was involved, and lies were involved, and family was at risk, and also family was made. Like, the choices that they had to make in this were just so heavy, and the potential for such good things to come about for their family, it couldn't take off for them, and it was so tragic, and it was really enthralling, and I was really captivated by what was going on in this struggle, that this internal struggle that all the characters were really going through. So I felt really bad for the kid. I felt really bad for everybody involved, and it's one movie that you can't shake the feeling when you leave. You still feel what you were feeling, what the characters were feeling when you leave. It's something you take with you afterwards. So I thought it was something that I definitely had to put on my list.
Yeah, I think it had a lot of emotional gravitas in this film. I think I like, again, where you have these films where you can talk to the people that have watched them, or that you watched with them or whatever, and kind of debate what kind of choices you would make or what. But it's also something that I think is somewhat problematic, because I don't know if anyone can really say what they would do like, for example, in this film, what they would do in that exact situation, because it's a situation you cannot possibly wrap your mind around actually being involved. So I think it's sometimes unfair to say that someone else is acting unrealistic or you don't buy into the character motivations or stuff like that, because I have heard some of those complaints about this film, and those just seem bizarre to me, because I don't know any human being that could really wrap their minds around being in the situation that they find themselves in to make that type of commentary. I think that this movie is also greatly aided by the performances here by Michael Fassbender and Alicia Vikander. They are phenomenal here. Rachel Weisz is good as well. I think there was a lot, like you said, to think about during the film, but also that left the theater with you that you were trying to grapple. I think it's a solid film. This is easily in my probably top 25. So I liked it a lot. I think there are a couple things here and there that could have been improved on, but overall, I think just the emotional weight and the thought-provoking nature it has to kind of get you to re-examine what you would do for certain things that you love or certain people that you love, and how that would all boil down is very fascinating to kind of dig deeper into. All right, so for my number 8, Amanda, you won't hate this one, so we can take a break from the films that you're against.
Well, thanks.
No problem. I think just like 2016 had a bunch of coming-of-age films, it also seemed like it was a year where thrillers and suspense films kind of reemerged into the forefront, not just as, fun, entertaining films, but films that can also be talked about in conversations like this, like we're having with our top 10 films of the year. And one example for me that fits that to a T is my number 8, and that would be Green Room. I just think that there was so much to enjoy in this film. I think Patrick Stewart was freaking phenomenal as the villain here. And I think, too, just, again, a situation where characters find themselves involved in something that they weren't planning, that they didn't expect, and then we have to deal with the fact that now we're in that situation. How are we going to react? And I think right from the beginning it sets the tone when... obviously they're trapped in this building with skinhead group kind of calling the shots. But I think the very first time when they try to get out of that room, the amount of visual, the depiction of violence that we get immediately kind of sent the message to you that this is not just the typical film that you're used to in this type of context. Like it hit a real note right from the beginning with that violence, and it kind of set you back on your toes a little bit. And I think the movie was riveting throughout. The characters were interesting, and it was just a fun, well, I don't know if fun's the right word, but it was just an entertaining, thrilling ride the entire time, and it stuck with me. This is something we saw very early on, and a lot of times those will fade as you see more and more films, but Green Room stuck with me the entire year, and it's something that I am interested to revisit. So we've only seen it one time, and I'd be interested to see what kind of impact it has on a second viewing. But Green Room is my number 8.
Yeah, I didn't think it was really going to be like that, and then, the crazy started happening, and I was like, whoa, it's going to be like that, huh? So... It definitely gets you.
It does. Dan, what is your number 8?
Well, you're talking about coming of age films, and my last 2 films were kind of depressing. So let's get a little bit lighter, a little fun, a little more enjoyable, a lot more enjoyable, a lot funnier. With my number 8, I'm going to go with Hunt for the Wilder People. Last year, What We Do in the Shadows was in my top 10, and getting another film from the same director. Gotta love the New Zealand guys. It's as mentioned, it is another. I guess it's coming of age, perhaps, but I think there's a little bit more to it than that. Sam Neill comes back from the proverbial career grave to show that he's a really great actor, and Julian Demison, who there's this great list. A lot with coming of age films, you get a lot of great debut performances, and his may not be the most emotional, powerful performance, but he's just naturally funny, has a great presence to himself. I don't know what type of career he has, but he's really great in this, and it's just has this kind of fantastical atmosphere to it, almost like a pseudo fairy tale that really lends itself greatly. it's a joyous good time. It's but there are some more serious parts to it too. Never I think ever gets too serious, but it's just I think one of those movies that has a universal appeal without being corny and ever going too far. I had some issues with the third act or really some specific character, but on me watching it, most of those issues I kind of washed away. So probably my most rewatchable movie of the year as well. So that's my number 8.
Yeah,
What are people?
I think I was looking back. We're doing the movie awards blog posts and different things. And last year, one of my categories was the "Where Have You Been" award. And I'm like, well, there's no way I can do that this year because there's not the same amount of people. Because last year I could talk about Harrison Ford with Han Solo and Rocky making his comeback, and there was a couple other people that kind of showed up that we hadn't seen a lot of before. And I didn't even consider 2016 to do that award again because I'm like, who would I have? And I completely forgot about Sam Neill coming out of the woodwork for this one. And I agree, it's a great year for child performers as well. And I think, unfortunately, his performance in Hunt for the Wilder People might get left behind a little bit in those conversations because there was some maybe more emotional powerhouse or dramatic movies that other children were involved in, and this one has a little bit more of a whimsical taste. But I think you have to have good timing, and you have to have almost even more acting chops to be able to pull off what he was in some of this, with both serious moments and comedic moments. So I agree, he did fantastic in this one. And anybody that was doubting Taika Waititi and thought that maybe he was just a one-hit wonder or whatever, not a thing. He's produced a couple good films now in a row back to back, so that's impressive.
I'm glad you said his name and not me.
All right, Matt, what do you have for your number 7?
My number 7 is one you loaned to me, so I'm sure you could guess it. I was surprised by how much I loved Deadpool this year. I've read a lot of Deadpool comics. I got a buddy who's really into Deadpool. And also Brian Posehn did a run for years, and I love him as a comedian. He's not one of my favorite characters. I don't know. I go back and forth on the humorous comic book things, because like some of the things like the Super Buddies that the DC did was amazing, but also like I feel like Deadpool is kind of a one-note character, and it's not someone I want to spend money on, even if I will enjoy it from time to time. So I was surprised at how well this movie was, like how perfect of an adaptation of that character it was. How interesting it was. Like they did great jobs breaking the fourth wall when they did. I enjoyed that movie wholeheartedly from beginning to end, and I am very worried about the sequel.
Something that Deadpool, right from the get-go, the marketing for Deadpool was absolutely extraordinary. And just the lengths that they went to, and the work that Ryan Reynolds put into that, and the opening credit scene was fantastic. Amanda, I think you were the only one that wasn't as high as the rest of us on Deadpool. Has anything changed over time, or do you need to rewatch it?
I'd like to rewatch it. I just was not super impressed at all. And I mean, the R rating I was really excited about, and I just felt like they made it R just with language and sex. Like they could have done a lot more with it, I think. And I don't know, some of the scenes I felt were, pretty cool, but I don't remember sitting there going, "Oh, this is freaking awesome." I feel like
probably the most shocked I was as far as one of your reactions to a movie all year, because I'm still shocked that you didn't like it.
I feel like I was just in the theater, like we were in a packed theater in like the middle of the freaking day, and I'm pretty sure it was like Valentine's Day, wasn't it? And I felt like I was sitting there looking at everybody around me like, why the fuck do people like this? Like, I felt like I was the only one sitting on a little island, like, flabbergasted that everybody else was blown the hell away by it. I don't know.
Revisit is necessary. All right, Amanda, then what is your superior number 7 pick in your book?
Superior number 7? Are you trying to... I'm not the one trying to say that my list is better than Matt's. What the fuck is going on here?
No, you're hating on all of our films. It's okay.
You guys just picked movies that I don't like. You probably have it out for me. That's what it is. Anyways, I did something, I don't know, it just seemed right. Number 7 for me is Magnificent 7.
I didn't even realize that was what yours was when I was saying Superior 7. I didn't... Okay, continue.
It's magnificent. Maybe not superior, but it's freaking magnificent. It was my birthday movie. I had a lot of fun with it. Denzel, I was kind of skeptical on how he would be in a Western, but I think he wasn't just like Brooklyn Denzel, you know what I mean? He still had his swag, but I think he did the Western justice, and I loved the parts of the team. I loved everybody involved, and I thought they all did a really good job of showcasing like their individual personalities. And I also liked how they worked together, and I thought that the action in it was amazing. And it surprised me, like some of the people that don't make it, I was like, man, because I don't remember the original very well. So it was a new watch for me, really, and it was great to see those sweeping landscape scenes on the big screen and in IMAX, and I had a really good experience with it.
You know, in the world that we live in when it comes to films, with the sheer volume of adaptations as far as sequels, spin-offs, remakes, reboots, etc., if you were to tell me at the beginning of the year that Magnificent Seven was a superior film to so many of the other franchise films that we got, I would not have believed you, because this seemed like it had all the workings to be a disaster. And in my book, it was far better than most other big budget blockbuster type franchise films, with a few exceptions. I was so pleasantly surprised with how much I had. I think if you can just allow yourself to have fun, Magnificent Seven is a fun ride, regardless of your opinions on the previous films that it draws from. I think Denzel was great. I don't know if it's a problem that the first thing I think about when Magnificent Seven comes up, the first thing I think about is Vincent D'Onofrio's entrance every single time. I don't know if that's a good thing for the film or not, that I'm not remembering anything else, but it was one of the biggest laughs I had the entire year, and not in a bad way. I absolutely loved when he started speaking. So
he's actually the wizard in that new Emerald City TV show, and I didn't know it was him at first, and once I saw in the credits that it was him, I was then like waiting for his voice to be something crazy like this, and it wasn't.
I like your pick. Magnificent Seven's in my top 25 right now, so I think that's a great fun ride for anybody that likes their westerns or likes any of the actors that are involved with that one. So, all right, for my next one, like I said, I was only taking a brief hiatus from not making Amanda upset. That's the theme, I guess, today. So let's go right back to it. My number 7. I'm afraid to even say the title, so Amanda, just let me say my spiel first. But my number 7 is going to be La La Land. Obviously swept the awards at the Golden Globes. I'm getting the look of death right now. Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone, I think, were amazing in their acting performances. Amanda has stopped everything she's doing just so she can stare at me in disdain. All right. Now, do I think it was deserving of sweeping all the awards at any of these award ceremonies? I would say no. All right. I do think that that's a little bit ridiculous. I don't have it in my top 1, top 3, top 5. I don't think it's that worthy. But I do like Damien Chazelle as a director. I loved Whiplash. I do think there's a lot to love about this film. I do think that it also plays to all the things that all the award circuits tend to like. They like movies made about movies. They like movies that kind of pay homage to classic Hollywood, et cetera, et cetera. But I gotta support the idea that we have a modern musical being made like this that did resonate and did get some attention. I do like that. I'm a big fan of musicals, but I'm not necessarily a big fan of everything about musicals. And I do think there was some misses along the way with La La Land. It definitely was not a perfect film, but I think there is enough to speak to anybody that has dreams, anybody that has hopes. And also, I think the biggest win for this film is the way that it illustrates or depicts how so many little choices that come up in your life or on your journey to achieve this or achieve that can completely impact and almost become a new journey for you, or a complete sidetrack for you, or throw you off course or get you back on course. And it's just so interesting to see kind of how all of those little detailed decisions can kind of interweave with each other and create a new outcome for you. I think Ryan Gosling is magnetic on screen. I think he really sells this. I know Emma Stone's the one that's getting, not that they both didn't win awards, et cetera, but everybody seems to be saying it's Emma Stone's film. And ranting and raving, and while she was good, I think Ryan Gosling was arguably better. I think he displays a bigger range of emotions. I think he's more convincing. I think he was phenomenal. This is one of his best performances I've ever seen. And even though there's little nitpicks I would probably draw out if we were doing a full review of this, not enough for me to completely discount it. I think it's a worthy film. I think it's unique. And I think there's a lot to love here, even if I'm not putting it in my top 5. Amanda, anything?
No, I don't want to say shit about that movie because I fucking hated it. Don't tell me it's about how you had to not, you know, be in love with somebody because you were out trying to get what you wanted and achieve your dreams, and then showing a fucking, like, flashback scene.
No spoilers.
That, you know, everything could have been different.
I don't understand your argument, but
so they're
I don't
like,
want to spoil anything for people.
We
so
can't
people
do
haven't
this.
seen this film, so I don't want to spoil it.
Whatever. We can't do this because of this, but then we're going to show you in a scene that it really all was possible, and we just didn't do it that way.
Well, I think that's reality. Things don't always happen the way that they could have happened in life.
But this is a fantastical film. It's all about this, like, glamour and all this fanciful nature. So I don't understand why you had to just go in and it just made no sense. Also, why they couldn't do what they were trying to do together.
Yeah, I think you're getting too hung up on that one specific point of it. But I mean, I think
there's all these like stupid like sweeping scenes where they're just like a circle and you can't even see what's going on. It's just like this sweeping scenes. It's making me freaking dizzy and I don't even know what the hell's going on.
One thing we're learning that the camera needs to stay still for you.
I don't need it to be just like stark still the whole time, but don't be panning around for no reason when all you see is like colors and it's just like it's a guy holding a camera and spinning in a circle.
Okay.
Just a lot of it. I didn't need to make total sense, but a lot of it didn't click.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what your argument is, but I guess even though
you're just hung up because it's a musical and you love freaking musicals.
No, there's a lot of musicals I hate. There's a lot of musicals I hate, and though I actually the opening number to this, even though people are ranting and raving it, the highway scene, the big musical scene to open it, I hate that type of musical scene in musicals. I hate it. That's my least favorite type of musical number in those types of films. But I'm going back to the point, like, I get that you're saying it's fanciful, it's supposed to be kind of this mystical, not necessarily grounded in reality world, but I think that's part of the magic of what he did here is he did all that, but then he also did have these underlying strings that are so based in reality on how things would play out in a real situation where you're not going to make every perfect decision. You're not going to make every decision that's going to end up in your fairy tale ending. You're going to go off track here. You're going to get distracted here. You're going to have roadblocks here. And I think that's why this film works for me, because it does show those realistic
but it wasn't, because there was really no reason for them to make the choices.
A lot of times there's no reason for people to make decisions that they make that divert them from a certain course, but it's life and it happens.
It was ridiculous.
All right, it's my number 7. Dan, save me and change topics, please.
I wish I could chime in, but I have not seen it, so I can't really say anything.
No, you don't, Dan, because I don't want to hate you, okay? I don't want to hate you.
I wanted Dan to support me. All right, Dan, what's your number 7?
All right. So when I see it, I just want to tell both of you. Like, I still haven't seen it. I have no idea. It's weird. All right. So we talked. I think you mentioned that a lot of coming of age movies this year, and kind of see that with the fact that my 2 films are 8 and 7 are both coming of age movies. For number 7, I have what I would probably call maybe my most overlooked movie of 2016, and it's King Jack. It is this kind of slice of life film about kind of just this kid growing up and his life, and it's very reminiscent of like a David Gordon Green or Jeff Nichols type of film. Again, from a Davey director, Phil Thompson, with a lot of brand new actors. Charlie Plummer is the main Jack, and you're just kind of following his life. He's into the middle of summer. He's kind of dealing with going to summer school, and there's this girl he's trying to get. And what I really love about the movie is what it says about the importance of parental relationships, rather, and especially that of male role models, without ever really approaching the topic, never even mentioning it, but it's always there lingering in the background. Because what you kind of realize by the end is that there are actually very few adults in the entire film, and I just enjoy this type of movie. It's probably a movie maybe I enjoy more than I should. I just like how it kind of brings you into this world, and it's somewhat everyday. It's not like all that, I would say, glamorous or fantastic. It's very kind of down to earth, but it's kind of what I liked about it. And has a great bully, and you have this bully relationship going on, and it just kind of just lingered with me because of that. So it's currently streaming on Netflix if you do want to check it out, and it's King Jack.
This is not the first time I've heard this one brought up, but I completely, like you said, went under my radar, overlooked this one, so I have not seen this one yet. I'll put it on the list, but when you hear films being thrown out here and there, and then all of a sudden you get wrapped up in what the next film is you see, and you forget to write things down. I got to do a better job of writing things down. So I'll add this one to the list to watch early on here this year. Matt, what do you have number 6?
Continuing my list of the biggest grossing movies of 2016, I saw Captain America Civil War this year. I don't know, man. It's another Avengers movie. It's the Avengers movie that Avengers 2 should have been, because it was way better than Avengers 2. I really liked Civil War. I guess I should make an asterisk here. For the next handful of movies, I'm a little, like, the placement's a little in flux because I saw 2 of them today. But I currently have Captain America at number 6. I really loved it. I thought they did a great job with Spider-Man, which I was very worried about. I loved how they were able to include Ant-Man after his great movie, because he's not necessarily Avengers material. Like, I don't know. Everyone's seen it, right? It was great. It was good. Civil War, man.
Yeah, I think it is too. I just had this one missing my top group. I think it's in my top 20, top 25, somewhere in that range. But I think that's the best. I think you can make the argument between that one and Deadpool as far as which one's the best comic book film. But for me, I give the edge to Captain America. I think there were some fight scenes that are not easy to forget, both with big ensembles, which show a lot of the choreography, etc., and then also some more intimate fight scenes that go on there too. An underrated villain as well. I think there's a lot to love about Captain America Civil War. I know a lot of people have already tuned out to the Marvel formula, and they're writing it off, and they don't want to see any more comic book films, and everyone's the same, but it's really not. So you just got to be able to, I mean, that's just like saying every coming of age film is the same, or every thriller's the same. Yeah, there's formulas for all movies, but if you look closely, there's differences that you can find, and there's a reason why Captain America Civil War stands above something like Batman vs. Superman, X-Men, etc. from this year. So I like that one. Amanda?
Yeah, I mean, definitely solid. I think that Civil War definitely had some super cool fight scenes and some action stuff going on that I like. That motorcycle scene with Bucky, blew my mind. And introduction of like some new characters and stuff, so pretty dope. So solid choice.
And what do you have as your next pick?
Number 6. Already been talked about a little bit. I'm gonna share the love here with Dan. My number 6 is Hunt for the Wilder People. I was super shocked by how much I liked this movie. Didn't know anything about it going into it. Surprised that Sam Neill, back from the proverbial movie grave, and I think that he did an awesome job showing us what he can really do. And the new child actor that we get a taste of here was really awesome, and I think that it had the right kind of humor. Humor was very well placed, and always was lighthearted in its humor, but definitely has some heavy-hearted moments, and carries that love and the feel, that the good feelings that are built up throughout, even to the end. And I really was pleasantly surprised that I even liked it. So I'm glad that I enjoyed it so much. So my number 6 is Hunt for the Wilder People.
Also had one of the most surprising plot twists, I think, of the whole year that at least I did not see coming. there's been a lot of movies with like that thought they had twists and little plot turns and stuff throughout the year, and some of them were very predictable, and some of them caught you off guard. And this was definitely one that caught me off guard right towards the beginning, where I was like, okay, that's a different way we're going here with this film than I expected. But yeah, I think there's a lot of good to say about Hunt for the Wilder People. I'll go to my number 6 now. I don't know. I think this one grew more on me after watching it. It wasn't necessarily the initial reaction, but the more I thought about it, the more it kind of rose up the ranks for me. And I think there's a lot to like about this one. A lot of people champion this one, so I won't be alone here. But my number 6 is going to be Hell or High Water. I just think, I don't know how much of a Western I would call it, but that's where it's getting lumped into, I guess. But I just think there's a lot to say for a film that gives you characters that are doing bad things or committing crimes or, you know, having questionable morals or ethics, that at the same time can get you in a position where you're completely understanding the motives and the decision-making process and the rationale behind it. And it puts you as a viewer in an interesting predicament where you have to try to reconcile those two things. Like, why am I rooting for someone, you know, the whole anti-hero thing? Why am I rooting for somebody that is clearly not someone that is a good role model or not someone that I should be supporting? But I think this film does a very good job of displaying that in a way that's also natural, and it doesn't seem like they're forcing anything or pulling the wool over your eyes or anything like that. I think there's some standout performances. I think there's, for some reason, some, you would never label this as a comedy, but there's some great comedic moments in this film. I think of specifically the diner scene where the waitress basically tells them what they're not, asks them what they're not going to have. I think that's one of the most memorable scenes of the year, and it was hysterical when it was happening. And also some catch you off guard type dramatic moments as well. I think it's one of the best endings of any film this whole year, with the little epilogue between the two main characters, and kind of where they leave it at is a great artistic choice. So I was very impressed. I didn't really have a lot of expectations one way or the other. It wasn't one that was really on my radar at the beginning of the year, but Hell or High Water definitely delivered for me, and that's my number 6.
Yeah, I really wanted to find a place for that in my top 10. It's very close because the director he did Start Up, which was my favorite film of that given year. But but I agree pretty much with everything you said. It's a great film.
All right, and where do you go next?
My number 6 is a movie I recently caught up with, again from a director that I think, well, we've talked about, I think, some of his films previously with things like Old Boy, and Stoker was an honorable mention for me years ago for my top 10. But his recent film from 2016, The Handmaiden, is my next movie on my list, and that, of course, is director is Chan-Wook Park. And with Handmaiden, there's a lot, a lot to experience. You can be captivated by its really intricately woven mystery. It has this tranquil visual beauty. He knows how to set up shots. It's just amazing seeing just how intricate he can become. Very sensationalized with the depiction of sex, and at times the exploration may seem excessive, but I think there is a point to where he's going. And I think really also these characters are fully realized, and you never truly know where people stand, in large part due to the performances. It's really hard to really grasp, okay, where is this going? What are people really feeling? And a lot of that is due to just how great all the performances are. It's hard to kind of talk about the movie without getting anything away, but it basically involves this plot to try to marry this woman who is possibly mentally unstable, and the handmaiden is brought in to try to help that occur, but a lot more happens, and it's broken up to 3 separate stories, and it's one of those things where it's an unreliable, not necessarily narrator, but kind of depiction of events, because as it unfolds, you find out that certain things were not told to you, but it's really smartly developed and designed. And it kind of really gets into the magical pervasion of sex in the way it can become kind of a downside of the obsession that people can have. And again, similar to American Honey, I think it's probably a movie that will probably turn a lot of people away because it gets graphic at times, maybe unnecessarily so at certain points. But I ended up quite enjoying it. I was really impressed with filmmaking at its finest. So it's my number 6.
Yeah, I heard a lot of people talking high praise about Handmaiden, but we just couldn't find a way to access it in time to see it for this. So high on the queue, but we have to have it become available first. But a lot of people definitely, you're not alone in that camp with the high praise for The Handmaiden. Matt, that means we're into our top 5 territory. So how are you going to start it off?
Another movie I saw with Amy's aunt that I did not expect to like, but I mean, here it is in the top 5. And that would be Zootopia. This movie took me 100% by surprise. I don't know, it's so interesting. Like, especially if you go back to the very first, like, ads that explain what anthropomorphism is and stuff, and it's, like, really weird, because it's like, these are animals that walk and they talk, and it's, like, so unlike what the movie ended up. I mean, it is what the movie ended up being, but it's like it doesn't show. I think one of my favorite things about this movie is the marketing, because the first ads just explained a weird concept that people might not understand if they're not in the furry community. By the last ad, they're just like, here's one scene from the movie cut down so it's a minute long, so you can digest the scene and see how it's funny, and we're not going to ruin all the jokes of the movie. Like, I think that's the best way to advertise any comedy ever. Like, why is that not the thing that they do for every comedy? They ruin it so much in the trailers in a lot of movies. But then, the movie itself holds up. It's great. The humor is solid for adults and kids. The story is, I would say, less predictable than a lot of kids' movies are. I didn't expect to like it, and by the time I was done with it, I loved it. Zootopia.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are in that same camp. Amanda, what did you think of Zootopia overall?
I thought it was pretty good. I think it was something that we saw kind of early in the year, and it maybe got a little overshadowed just because of the fact that we pumped so many movies into the year. But I think that it had some really awesome visual things going on. I think it had a really cute, fun storyline and relationship between the two main characters. And I think that it had stuff for both kids and adults, which is the great mix that they always try for. So definitely a solid choice. I struggled with trying to figure out how I would rank the animated movies that I saw this year, and I think Zootopia would definitely be towards the top for sure.
Yeah, I think it's definitely in the top couple animated films of the year, and interesting too. Another little different style of a movie for Disney too, from that kind of like they have been doing over the last 3, 4, 5 years, where they're sprinkling in these more kind of off the beaten path from what we're used to, and I think it definitely worked out well for that. A lot showing up on a lot of people's top 10s that I'm hearing, so a lot of love for Zootopia out there for sure. Dan, what are your thoughts on Zootopia?
Yeah, it's great. I enjoyed it a lot. It was my top 10 of the year so far, halfway through the year, and for me, it's the second best animated movie of the year.
Yeah, I think I would probably agree with that statement. So, all right, Amanda, what is your first in the top 5?
Another one that I was surprised that I liked so much and really didn't know too much about going into, because I hadn't seen the first kind of installment of this, and I don't really know how it intertwines exactly yet because I hadn't seen that. But my number 5 is 10 Cloverfield Lane. John Goodman was absolutely amazing in this. Never seen him really from that light. I've seen him kind of be, stern and not like the lovable Dan from Roseanne all the time. But this really took it to a whole new level, and the suspense in this was built up superbly, and it was another one of those where you had to struggle with, is this a good guy, is this a bad guy, do I know what's going on? And it would give you a taste of something, and you would think you had it figured out, and you would set yourself up, and you told yourself you knew what was going to happen next, and then it would flip the script, and something would come out of left field and change everything for you. So it was definite thrill ride, kept me hanging on until the end. The end was a little sketchy for me, but I think the meat of the movie was what was most important there, and that really did it for me. So 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Yeah, I think like I was saying before, the year of the reemergence of the thriller, Green Room, 10 Cloverfield Lane, probably both leading the way in that pack. But I would just say that I'm in agreement because it's also my number 5. So 10 Cloverfield Lane will be my number 5. I edged out Green Room slightly for me. I don't know if it's John Goodman or if it's more so the fact that in this one, like you're talking about, there's a much blurrier, grayer area as far as who's good, who's bad, and what's actually going on. And like you said, they try to give you hints here and hints there, but a lot of times what your interpretation of those hints might not be actually what is factual. I agree with the Molotov cocktail not being necessary at the end. That was a little bit of a absurd moment towards the climax, but I think, like you said, if you can kind of think back to the whole of the movie and the meat and potatoes of what was going on, that's a minor detail, so I'm not going to get hung up on it. So it was one of the most fun and unexpected, because I almost had negative expectations going into this one, just based on not knowing much about the, I guess, quote unquote, universe. But I left absolutely having a lot of fun. And like Green Room, it's something that we saw very early on in the year, and it stuck with me for the entire year. It was a fun ride. I would see John Goodman play this type of character 1,000 times over. I thought he was mesmerizing. I thought who else could pull off just how impactful it is to show up with different amounts of facial hair. Like that's all it took. Like to change his look a little bit, completely freak you out. And also some unexpected moments too along the way as far as some of the violence goes. So I was a huge fan of 10 Cloverfield Lane. It's one of the ones that we've purchased on Blu-ray. We don't purchase a ton of movies every year on Blu-ray, but this was one of the first ones that we bought this year. So in 100% agreement, 10 Cloverfield Lane, my number 5 as well. Dan?
Well, I guess we'll stick with the theme of people trapped into a room, but I'm going to go with the other movie of people trapped in a room that's also been mentioned, and that's Green Room. I love Jeremy Saulnier's Blue Ruin. It was in my top 5 that year as well. And with this, I think he's shown that he's really great at subverting expectations when it comes to filmmaking. Like, he's clearly a fan of the type of movie types of movies he makes, and by that he's able to kind of take that type of film and bring it to another level. And I don't know, I just was fascinated by this. And you mentioned thriller, and it's edge of your seat. That's kind of a cliche, but I think it's true in this. And one of my favorite moments is that it's a spoiler, but it comes near the end, and I won't go into great detail, but it just involves a dog and the build up, and you think certain things going to happen, and it ends up kind of leaving more on a humorous note, which I just thought that was a great way to end it. But he uses a lot of small details and atmosphere rather than kind of the cliche jump scares, like even just the feedback from a microphone and really knowing how to bring you into the room and give you an idea of space, which I think ends up playing a big part as the movie goes on. So I loved it, and I'm really excited for anything time he's coming out with a movie. I'm going to be there because two movies in so far, I love both of them.
Yeah, he's definitely got a good track record so far, and I think there are some. I completely forgot, since like I said, I need to rewatch this one because I forgot about some of those moments. But you're right, that it was a great touch on that scene that did involve that dog, and that's just one example of a lot of times where he didn't necessarily go with the way that you would expect a director to go, especially a young director and someone that doesn't have a huge filmography behind him to make some of those choices and show the restraint is very interesting to see, and it makes you excited for more of what he's going to be doing. So obviously in agreement, since it was in my top 10 as well. Matt, what do you have at your number 4?
And my number 4 was already mentioned as a controversial one, and that's Ghostbusters, which, if you had asked me yesterday, was my number 2. I loved this movie. I went and saw it with you, Kevin and Amanda,
Yep.
and it was great, and I wish we'd see more movies together, but that's more on me than it is you. I really enjoyed this. I had real low hopes. I was very upset with the idea of it because I feel like if you're gonna do an all if you're like, we're gonna do an all female ensemble cast, it's like, that's great, do it. Give them their own movie, give them an original story. Don't just remake an old story, especially if you've got a cast this strong. Just give them an original idea. Or, even cheesier, give them a sequel rather than a reboot. And I think that they blurred the line between sequel and reboot enough in this that it didn't piss me off too much. I wish it would have made more money because I would love to see a sequel. I enjoyed Ghostbusters, and I ain't even mad.
No, I think we're all, at least Amanda and myself, had just as an enjoyable experience as you did in the theater with that one. And like she said, it was in her top 10, and it was one for me that far exceeded my expectations too. I was kind of going in somewhat trepidatious, and I was entertained. I liked the odes, the homages they did. I liked the cameos. I liked the way that they kind of blurred that line as well. Amanda, what do you got next?
My number 4 is Rogue One. I think
Rogue One.
that it definitely set up the hope for New Hope. I think it did an awesome job of that. I think that it was surprising in its humor. I think that the action was really solid. I really got vested in a lot of the characters, and I think that I don't think I was as prepared for the level of, I don't know, things not ending so happy for everybody. I don't think I was as prepared. I mean, I think people could say that was kind of obvious, but it didn't really click for me until it was happening, and I was like, oh crap, well, this is happening. So I think it did exactly what it was supposed to do, and it did it very well.
Yeah. My biggest frustration with Rogue One is the critiques that it's getting unfairly, I think, in some situations, because I think a lot of people were viewing that the spin-off Star Wars films were going to be able to go in these completely different directions and show us like a completely different type of Star Wars movie. And that might happen with some of the spin-off movies, but this wasn't the one that was going to do that, and this wasn't the one that should have done that. It's still so closely tied into the events of the original trilogy that I don't understand why people would think it's going to be a completely different feel and a completely different type of film. I mean, I think they did some of that. I mean, I think from some of the war standpoints, they kind of did some stuff that we haven't seen before, obviously, but I think that's an unfair criticism. I get the criticism a little bit more about the character development, but at the same time, this is just such a finite moment in time, and these characters were going to have a very short moment in the sun, so to speak, so I don't understand quite to the level that some people might have wanted. I mean, this isn't going to feel like your regular Star Wars characters. These aren't going to be characters that you get 3, 4, 5, 6 movies to learn about. This is characters that you're going to get a couple hours to learn about, and that's all that you're going to get. So I think sometimes it's like a subconscious way that we're comparing them to other characters in this universe, and I don't think that's a fair comparison. I think even if you were to kind of put yourself into the universe and ask people in the Star Wars universe who Jyn Erso was or who some of these other characters were, they're going to know as little about them as we did over the course of the movie. So I don't know. I think that it did so many things that I wasn't expecting that I enjoyed, and I think the humor was so well balanced that you never got that Jar Jar Binks type of humor. You never got, the annoyance that you did maybe from some people find out of even like a C-3PO or something like that. I think there was a lot of very well timed, very well written, humorous moments. I think that there was a couple missteps when it came to some of the cameos, but overall, I was a huge fan. I did not expect to enjoy this film as much as I did. I mean, that's silly to say because I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so I expect to enjoy all of them, but I was not expecting to enjoy this one more than the number of Star Wars movies I do enjoy it more than. So I don't know. I guess that's how I'll put that. So I like it. I like seeing Star Wars in your list. All right. For my number 4, Matt, you talked about Zootopia, and I said that it was the number 2 best animated film this year. My number 1 best animated film comes in here at number 4, and that is Kubo and the Two Strings. I was absolutely freaking blown away by Kubo and the Two Strings. Man, I mean, I am a fan of Laika Studios, and I am a fan of what they've done in the past. I haven't seen everything, but I've seen a majority of it, and I've liked it. But this one just knockout punch to me as far as people were talking about Zootopia, and people are getting excited about Finding Dory, and no, this was the one that you needed to watch, guys and gals. Kubo and the Two Strings hit on so many different elements, and Dan, I don't remember if it was a Letterboxd review or a Facebook or a tweet or what that you were mentioning after you saw it, and you illustrated it much better than I did, but there was from a visual standpoint, from a storytelling standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, it knocked it out of the park on every level. So I'm not going to go too much more into it, but Kubo and the Two Strings is my number 4. Dan, what do you have at yours?
For my number 4, I'm a huge fan of you guys talking about La La Land. I know a lot of people talked about, oh, it's a throwback, it's a it's a musical, and which it very much is. But to me, at least of what I saw so far, the throwback film that I loved was Hail Caesar by the Coen brothers. Not necessarily musical, does have musical bits though, as No Dames, for example. She definitely deserves an Oscar nomination for Best Song, maybe choreography. But I love this type of humor. I know Coen Brothers humor or comedic films tend to not do well when they first come out, and then they tend things like I'm trying to think, like Hudsucker Proxy, but then as years go on, people seem to appreciate them more, and I love this now. It has some of my favorite comedic scenes of the year, being the Jesus representation scene, or there's a sequence with Ray Fiennes and pronunciation, which is genius. It's wacky, it's weird, which I think could throw some people off. It's totally kind of off-putting, but I love this type of old-fashioned Hollywood. I love learning about it. I love just this movie about it. Josh Brolin is great. His performance is really being overlooked this year. This entire movie is really being overlooked this year, in my opinion. So it's my number 4, Hail Caesar.
Yeah, I agree. I think it did somehow, for some reason, get lost. I don't know if it was just the time of year it came out and people didn't give it huge reviews right out the gate, so then people either avoided it or just kind of wrote it off. But I think it's much better than people gave it credit for. Very much genius in both the choreography, like you said, the comedy, the dialogue, some great scenes, and some great performances. I think it deserves more love than it's getting. I agree with you. But I don't know what it is. I don't know, like I said, if it was a time of the year or if people were expecting something different or what. But I think it's an instant as far as throwback to classic Hollywood. So
I think it, when you had the cast that it did, and it's not, I think, a mainstream movie, but it was presented as one. So I think that kind of caused it, because you have this gigantic cast with pretty much every major star. But I think it's not necessarily designed for that type of audience. So I think that's why it kind of got rejected. But I know a lot of people didn't like it, but I fell in love with it.
Absolutely, good pick there with Hail Caesar. Matt, we only got time for 3 more here in our countdown. What are you going to have at your number 3?
I think everyone could guess. Everyone on this call should be able to guess what my final 3 are. Because 2 of them I saw today, and the other one is obvious. My number 3 currently is Magnificent Seven. Already been mentioned. I think I had a revelation during Magnificent Seven, not about it, but about Rogue One. Because everyone talked about how Rogue One, they're like stealing a thing. Rogue One should be like Ocean's 11. It should be this like campy heist movie. And though I would love to see that, and that's what they're talking about this Han Solo movie being. I think Rogue One's way closer to Magnificent Seven, just on a grander scale, because it's in a giant universe rather than the Old West. It's this like ensemble war movie about a very small group of people overtaking impossible odds. Is a great movie. They did a great job with the cast. They did just the right amount of tragedy and comedy. I mean, we talked about it already. It was good.
Did you have a favorite character or performance that stood out to you?
I mean, Denzel did an amazing job, but I think what I loved was Chris Pratt's character. Just because, he was like Chris Pratt, where he's like, I'm joking, I'm gambling, I'm having fun. But then he turned serious, and he turned serious hard. And, every time he did that, it was shocking. It was so good.
Can we put to bed the argument that some people are making that Chris Pratt's not a movie star? Can we stop that nonsense?
He was barely a television star 3 years ago.
Burt Macklin, come on, that's right there. There's a come on.
I've heard that from multiple people that they can't buy Chris Pratt as this Hollywood movie star that can carry a film on his own, and I just am confused by that statement because I've seen it 3 or 4 times now. So I don't. Anyways, But yeah, I like Magnificent Seven, like we said. So some agreement amongst the panel with that one. Amanda, your number 3.
Number 3. Then I get back definitely on board with the sad train. And I'm going to use train as a pun here almost. My number 3 is The Girl on the Train. Definitely another movie where you had to keep trying to piece things together, and you think everything's one way, and then all of a sudden the twist happens and this reveal happens, and I was blown away by it. I didn't even see, that aspect coming, and seeing the struggle that Emily Blunt's character went through, and how things in her life affected her in a way that changed her, and seeing how her life was and how destroyed she was, and how brilliantly Emily Blunt, emoted all those things was just amazing to me.
It's another one of those films where it was your experiences, you're not sure who you're supposed to be rooting for, who's good, who's bad. You're in that blurry state where you're not sure what reality is compared to what you're getting. It's one of those, similar to like what you get when you have like an unreliable narrator, where you're not sure what you're supposed to be feeling or emoting or reacting to. And all right, and for my number 3, we're going to go to a film that has already been talked about 2 different times, so there's not a lot left to add to it. I guess a common thread here, my number 3 will be Hunt for the Wilder People. I was just kind of going into this one open-minded, carefree, not really sure what I was going to make out of it. I knew it was, Taika Waititi, and I knew What We Do in the Shadows resonated with me. I knew I was a big fan of Flight of the Conchords, so I thought I'd give it a shot, and I fell in love with this film almost instantly. I do think that they're, like Dan was, I think, alluding to partly when he was talking about it, after first watch, there was the one character and the one sequence that I thought the movie would have been better without it being part of it. But maybe on multiple watches afterwards, maybe that, like you said, will diminish a little bit. But at first I was just like, I don't get why they had to include. I understand he's part of the group and he's part of the pack that kind of runs together with these couple individuals, but it seemed a little jarring. But overall, like you guys talked about, the comedic moments, the serious moments, the stuff that you weren't ready for, the child performance, Sam Neill's performance, the social commentary that's involved. I thought by far it's the best comedy I saw this entire year, if you want to just kind of group it under a comedy. So for me, Hunt for the Wilder People is good enough to be all the way up at number 3. Not Amanda next. Dan, you go next. What's your number 3?
Great. We didn't skip Amanda though, right? So.
No, we did not.
Okay. Yeah. So
We'll let that happen.
Yeah, I didn't think so. I don't know. You could have left after the whole La La Land thing. It just could have burned. Finally just be like, all right, I'm done. Just walk
as much as I wanted to.
So my number 3 is another one that's already been talked about, and it's an animated film. And I'm, as Kevin mentioned, I guess we're lockstep when it comes to animation this year. My favorite animation film in my number 3 is Kubo and the Two Strings. I've seen everything Locke has done, and I've enjoyed it a great deal. Box Trolls, I wouldn't say was a disappointment. It to me wasn't to the level of their other films, but Kubo to Two Strings it's just on another level. From the you give you the warning of not blinking at the start of the film, and I think that's something to follow because it is a beautifully rendered movie. It's a good combination of both stop motion animation, of course, some CGI, and the opening sequence with these massive waves and just. I was just wow. I'm like this is kind of taking stop motion animation to a new plane. And I also just love the story. Like it has like an ancient style to it. Like feels like this fable that's been passed down generation to generation with great characters. And love the final theme of it. And I don't know if it's me getting old, but I seem to enjoy a lot of movies that have to deal with some sort of parental aspect to them, and this has it very much so. Just a great world, great characters, great voice performances as well. And I don't know. I'm really impressed with what they're doing, and I don't know if this is gonna win Best Animated Feature at the Oscars. No, I enjoyed Moana as well. I thought that was really good, but I thought Kubo and Two Strings was just far and away Best Animated Film of the year for me.
Yeah, I think unfortunately it might be one that they're not. I don't know. I feel like it's going to get overlooked by some of the more, like obviously Disney had 2 films and you have that going for it. But I think it's definitely deserving. Obviously, it's the one I had the highest rated. But you brought up something too that I almost forgot to mention too. The voice work in this film was better than it should have been. Like when you just kind of said everybody that was involved at first, you're like, well, I don't know if that's going to be something or not. But I thought Matthew McConaughey was fantastic as the Beetle. I thought Art Parkinson as Kubo was great. I thought Ralph Fiennes as kind of the main antagonist there, and then the combination of the way that they did the 2 sisters with Rooney Mara's voice, and maybe one of my favorite ones, the grandmother, I guess you would say, of the group Cameo by Brenda Vaccaro. I mean, there was just voice work. Every character was better than I thought they would be, and it just all made it come together phenomenally. So obviously, I'm in agreement. We only had that one slot off. So a lot of love on this panel, at least, for Kubo and the 2 strings. Matt, what do you have at number 2?
My number 2, and when I first added it to the list sometime around 2 p.m. today, I had it at like number 6. It's bounced around a lot, but I finally settled at number 2. Even though I don't know if it's it's not number 2 of the year material, but that's where it is on my list. My special list. That's Star Trek Beyond. Fun movie. I think it's better than Into Darkness. I think it actually might be better than Star Trek 2009, honestly. I feel like they feel a lot more comfortable with this franchise than they have. I think they're embracing the fact that it's an alternate reality, not the traditional Star Trek reality. They're doing a lot of fun things with it. Ultimately, I think the 80s will kill them with rock concept at the end. Might be one of my favorite things in movie history. It fucking gets off the rails at the end of that movie, and it's like I could see that turning a lot of average viewers off, but me, I'm just like, I'm embracing this. Like, this is hilarious and I love it.
I got juiced up. I was like, yes, we're gonna go punch people in the face with a ship.
Yeah, it was so good.
There's never a wrong time to play Beastie Boys. I'm just saying that. There's not.
Nor is there a wrong role for Idris Elba. I don't care. Like, he's just everywhere this year. But I think anybody that... Man, it's so hard when you get into the Trek movies because there's so rigid of opinions when it comes to what you should do and what you shouldn't do, blah, blah, blah. But I think this paid perfect respects to what you would have got with some of those episodes in the classic series if you were thinking like, hey, let's take this and make it a fun, on the big screen film. I enjoyed this one quite a bit too. I think, like I said, that we talked about how bad a lot of the blockbusters were, and there was a crap ton of them. But we mentioned a few of them here with Magnificent Seven and Star Trek Beyond, for me at least, that do not fall into that category. They're enjoyable experiences. So I didn't quite get some of the hate that Star Trek Beyond got, but I guess I should expect that. It's Trekkies. So even though I am probably one of them, I don't get the starch opinions in some directions that film franchise, at least this rebooted film franchise, gets. But I liked it. So, Amanda, we only got 2 slots left. What do you have left?
Oh man, we have survived all the way to number 2. This movie I had extremely high hopes for and was definitely not disappointed, which is kind of not the thing lately at all with movies. But my number 2 is Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Super love Harry Potter, super love the movie universe that they created, and I was excited to see something different in the same magical world. And I was kind of worried to get back into it without Harry and all the characters that we kind of grew to love, but I was really excited to see a more adult side of the wizarding world, and I think that this did a really awesome job of showing the difference between magic in like Britain and then magic in America, and how the two like governments were different and how they do things is very different, and also the time period was very different. I thought that was really well done. I loved all the characters. I loved all the beasts, the little animals. They were super awesome. I think Eddie Redmayne did a really good job at being Newt Scamander. And at first I thought he was a little weird and mousy, but then I read something online that kind of made complete sense after the fact, and how he was behaving and what somebody would do if they were in the career of dealing with animals, and especially like, ferocious animals and things like that. So it made a lot of sense after the fact. And also it did some really cool things of revealing a concept that was only slightly touched upon in the books, and it made a lot of sense and was really, really mind-blowing and awesome that you get to see this concept that really isn't dealt with much, and especially not in the movies, very little in the books. So it was a really big concept if you think about it. So I was really pleasantly surprised with how much I did like the whole movie as an overall thing. So I'm glad that I wasn't disappointed.
It would have been too brutal to have this be a disappointment for you, because you'd already gone through Alice Through the Looking Glass. You'd already gone through Miss Peregrine's Home for the Peculiars. And there was at least another one that was very high on your anticipated list that you did not enjoy.
Suicide Squad was amazing.
Squad.
Yeah.
We needed at least one of them to pull through for you. So I'm glad that
exactly.
it's Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. I know a lot of people had some troubles with more so the ending and maybe the villain, but
I didn't have any problem with that at all. I actually had heard the rumor that Johnny Depp was supposed to be in it, and I wasn't sure what his role was going to be. And then when you see what his role is, I thought it was very cool.
Yeah. All right. So Harry Potter finding some more love in your world. I like it. So you're excited for future chapters in this story if they go further?
Definitely. Yeah.
All right. My number 2, let's go as far from fantasy as we possibly can, I guess, with this shift from the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them to something quite the opposite. A lot of people are praising this one, so I'm not going to be alone in this camp, but my number 2 is going to be Manchester by the Sea. Casey Affleck, tour de force in this one. But, this one, you're getting involved in some tragic storyline when you're seeing the previews and the trailers, etc., and you're getting ready to watch this film. Nothing can prepare you for what you actually do see during the course of Manchester by the Sea, though, and the performances are so authentic. The direction choices and the dialogue are so. There's nothing Hollywood necessarily about this film. It's all just realistic, authentic, and I think that works so well. The performances are amazing. Another good performance by Michelle Williams in a limited role, but Casey Affleck's really the heart and soul of this whole experience. And again, just another, maybe that's the theme. I mean, we've talked about coming of age and we've talked about thrillers and some things like that, but so many movies this year where you try to put yourself in the situation that these individuals are going through and try to figure out how you would cope with it or how you would act. And I think another hidden gem of this film is the way that they're somehow able to string in some of the more humorous moments or pieces of dialogue or things like that aren't forced but are just enough to allow you to survive watching this whole film, like just enough to break up some of the absolute extreme emotional stress. But I mean, if you think about this year overall, some of the situations that characters in these films have been put in are just so hard to wrap your head around. And this is a prime example of that. I think we can make a whole list just of those types of situations. And I don't know, this one resonated a lot as far as the emotional pull, but it was also still something that I think you can call entertaining or at least transfixing as you're watching it. He's depicted obviously as a simple, janitor for apartment building complex or different properties, etc. And just right from that, just the humor and the authenticity that they're able to put just from those scenes, let alone what happens when we get involved with knowing more of his family, is why this film didn't just resonate for me. It resonated with a lot of people. It's getting all kinds of award buzz, etc., on a lot of people's lists, and it's justified because Manchester by the Sea was easily one of the best films to come out this year. It's my number 2. Dan? what do you have in your number 2?
Yeah, another one I should have mentioned that I have not come up with, the ever-growing list, of course. My number 2 is, I'm loving the fact that we can get smart science fiction still, and my number 2 is Arrival. Last year, Denis Villeneuve, can't say the name. Dennis V, as we like to call him, gave us Sicario, which was a great crime thriller, and Arrival was, he's showing he can go into pretty much any genre, really. To me, it's brilliant. It shows that Hollywood's still capable of making big movies with big ideas, and he trades in the traditional like alien explosion for this really methodically paced narrative that kind of gets into the complexity of communication, humanity's ability to save itself as well as destroy itself. But I think really my feeling towards the film kind of escalated sharply with its ending. Not that its ending was surprising or this great twist, and I guess you could say it was, but it was more about what its ending said and what it was kind of thematically exploring, really about that idea of love and loss, and as that saying goes, it's better to love and loss than to not love at all. And I think it kind of does that to the extreme without getting anything away. And I thought it was just, I don't know, I thought it was a beautiful sentiment to kind of come out of nowhere, really, but in some ways kind of be building towards that through the entire film. And Amy Adams is easily one of the best actresses of the year. I don't know if this is one of her best performances ever. It's great. I thought she was great in this and Nocturnal Animals. She's pretty much great in everything she does. But this movie has, again, cliche to say, but it stuck with me a lot because of that last 15 minutes or so. So I ended up loving it. So it's my number 2.
Yeah. And I don't think it is how much of a twist it is if you can see it coming, if you couldn't see it coming, if you could guess or not. I don't think that has anything to do with anything. So that's why, sometimes you hear that, the big reveal or the big twist, it might throw the wrong idea there. It's not about that, like you're saying. It's more about what that's saying to the overall film and the message that they're portraying and getting to. And I'm in big time agreement. It's my number 11, so I just missed out. And I don't know if I rewatched a few of these, if they would shuffle a little bit, but I think it's easily the best science fiction film of the year. And I agree with everything you said. There's a lot to love about Arrival, and the choices that Denis Villeneuve makes in this film just continue to elevate him as one of the best directors in the business today. So I don't think it's a shock to anybody that a lot of us are looking forward to every film that he puts out from here on out. So great stuff about Arrival. That means it's drum roll time. It's time for everybody's number 1 pick of 2016. Matt, what do you have?
My number 1, I don't think it was mentioned at all, is obviously Rogue One. No, it had to be Rogue One. It's Star Wars. That's how I roll. I've invested my entire life in this franchise. That said, I am aware that it has problems. The problems aren't nearly as big as the internet wants you to think they are. It's a good movie. It's a fun movie. I actually, the guy who I was into Star Wars, the guy who got me into Star Wars as more than just 3 movies as a child, says it might be his favorite one. I don't agree with that. It has some issues, but I do think it's amazing. I think, heck, man, it's better than the Ewok Adventures. It's better than Clone Wars. As far as non-episodic ones go, it's number 1 out of 4. Like, you can't beat that. Other than number 1 out of 5, I guess. It's good. It's solid. And I loved it. And I can't wait for the next one, and the next one, and the next one.
P.S. Matt, it was my number 4, so it has been mentioned already, sir.
That was a joke.
You don't even listen to me, Matt. You don't even care about my list.
No, I heard you. You said you were disappointed with Suicide Squad. It was the happiest I've been all call.
Matt, where would you rank Rogue One?
Oh man,
that's the thing I've been struggling with the most.
I've only seen it twice. I want to see it a couple more times, but above the prequels, like if we're doing just canonical ones, it would be above the prequels, below whatever one is right above it, which is either going to be A New Hope or Return of the Jedi. I'm not sure about those two. Those two kind of fluctuate. So, right in this dead center, I guess.
I also don't understand the argument that some people made that this was boring or not entertaining. I don't get that at all.
Me either.
So,
I mean, I can get getting lost at the beginning because it says it's just like 2 seconds jump, 2 seconds jump, but by about 20 minutes in, like, it's not like it's unusual or there's things that are gonna, like, it's way more straightforward than fucking Doctor Strange. Like, how many different terms and phrases and alternate realities do you need to remember? And no one complained at the end of that one that I saw. I mean, I'm not like trudging through all the reviews, but I didn't see any complaints about that. This one makes way more sense than that one, and it's still, I don't know, it's fun.
yeah, see, like I can understand some of the critiques and some of the complaints, but for a Star Wars fan or for a fan of this universe to call it boring is mind-boggling to me. So I've heard that from more than one person. But I would rank this one much higher, but I always try to handicap my Star Wars rankings because I can't separate my fandom from anything. So it was probably my favorite experience in the movie theater all year. But I discounted it a bunch to try to make it more less. I don't know, to let my fandom less interfere. So I love that we're talking about it a couple different times. It was a great experience, way better than I thought it was going to be. And my initial reaction was that it was like the number 3 best Star Wars film I'd ever seen. I don't know. I'm still grappling with that, and it might be bumped down a couple spots into like the number 5 range. But I think it's great, and I think if you are a fan of this universe, you should allow yourself to have fun and enjoy it. So, Amanda. Dun, dun, dun. You're number 1.
My number 1, recently mentioned, but this movie, oh man, destroyed me really in a lot of ways, and I think about it so much even still. And we watched it not too long ago, but way longer. It stuck with me way longer than I think any movie has in a long time, and that's Manchester by the Sea. Definitely did not think I was gonna enjoy the film going into it. I had seen the previews, but really didn't see much of it that I thought was really striking. But getting into the film, I was really immediately vested in Casey Affleck's character, and you see the clip of him in the trailer, and you see him as one person, very animated and personable. And then you cut to him in the present, and he's a very, very different man. And he's really just a normal guy, and some really, really awful things have happened in his life. And it really turned him into somebody who was completely different than the man that he was before the tragedy happened. And I was not prepared for the level of tragedy in this film whatsoever, because you get no inclination of that from the previews. You know that there's going to be some level of tragedy in there and some heartache based on what you get from the preview, but that doesn't even really scratch the surface of what you get into and the things that transpire that you see in these kind of flashback scenes. And you see him dealing with these things and these things happening to him in these flashback scenes, and then you see the man that he is in the present and the things that he's dealing with and things that he's having to face that he hasn't had to face in a long time. And it really, really moved me, and it was awful to see, but it was something, I'm crying about it now, but it was something that, like, I think about all the time, and I really can't recommend it enough.
All right. Well, let's stop there.
I'm crying. I can't help it.
But obviously in agreement. I had it at number 2. You have it at number 1. It's emotionally moving, and I don't know. It's something you just have to experience and then figure out how you feel about it afterwards, I think. So, all right. That leads me to my number 1, and if we're not already emotionally scarred enough, let me see if I can join you in your tears. But I was happy with my top 10 going into this last 2 weeks, regardless of if anything cracked it. I mean, I was trying to watch a whole bunch of different films to see if something would crack in there and take one of the spots. I was not expecting for something to come in and take the number one spot, but that is by far what happened. It ran away with number one. It's not even close for me. As much as I love Manchester by the Sea and as much as moving as that was, this one hit me on a different level. So for my number one, I will go with the most recent watch to the theater, and that would be A Monster Calls. I did fib on our last episode because one of my categories for movie awards was vocal performance, and I gave it to James Earl Jones for Darth Vader, I think. No, it's Liam Neeson in A Monster Calls, and it's not even close. He's the best vocal performance, not only this year, but maybe of the last, 3 to 5 years in a film. The stuff that Liam Neeson was able to do in this role was freaking amazing. It just shows. I think we forget sometimes, or some people, maybe the general audiences forget the caliber of an actor that Liam Neeson is, because we get all wrapped up in the Takens and the action films and this, that, and the other. But this guy has another level when he gets the opportunity, and that's just part of the film. Man, I don't know how to describe this. I mean, it's emotional on another level for me, maybe, than it would be for some, because of firsthand experience to what's being depicted in here, where you have a younger child who is observing a parent, suffer and die of cancer. So I mean, I can relate to that firsthand. So that spoke to me a lot. I wish this film would have existed when I was dealing with that, or maybe shortly after I dealt with that, or something to maybe help me come to terms with what was going on. Talk about child performances. I mean, here's another one that may be the best out of all of them. I mean, the performance by this young child is phenomenal in here. Felicity Jones is phenomenal. Sigourney Weaver somehow, even amongst all that, is fantastic. I think the way that they artistically choose to depict what's going on here, from a visual standpoint, and how the quote unquote monster looks, to the watercolor animation style that they go when they tell these different stories that they're telling, it just all works together so well. And I don't know. I don't want to get into far to it, because I'll do exactly what Amanda just did and start to break down a little bit. But there's not many movies that can make me well up or have an effect emotionally on me, unfortunately, and this one did in spades. There's so many different moments that are emotional, but it's not doing it to try to elicit your emotions. It's not choosing its punches on, we're going to make you feel emotional here, or we're going to make you emotional here. It's doing it in a much more natural state, which is very appreciated. And it's just, the moments are allowed to happen, and you can react to them or not. And there's a couple of them that are just gut punches beyond belief. So I haven't seen a film that has affected me like this one has in a long time. So and that's in direct conversation with what we were just talking about with Manchester by the Sea, which is just as equal as traumatizing. But for me, A Monster Calls was just slightly on a different level, probably just from a personal attachment. But that is my number one, A Monster Calls. Amanda, you want to say anything about A Monster Calls?
Oh, because I'll probably start crying again. We were out of the theater and driving home, and we started talking about it, and I started crying again, just talking about it, because it was definitely an emotional ride down a path that it sticks with you for a while.
All right, Dan, what do you have for your number one film of 2016?
All right, well, I feel kind of bad because my number one's nowhere near that deep by any means. So this is the first time things ever happened to me where my number one at halfway through the year remained my number one to the very end, and which is a first, I think. I've come close a few times, but never to this extent. But my number one is Yorgos Lanthimos' kind of oddball, satirical, super dry comedy, The Lobster. It's this story of this kind of alternate / future world where basically people are forced to pair up and get married or turn into the animal of their choice, and it's kind of a weird concept, but wholly original and very much like everything he's done up to this point. I think what it why it works for me is because it hits on so many different levels. On the comedic standpoint, just the utter dedication to the tone of this movie I found extremely impressive. Like you needed actors that would all be able to kind of dedicate themselves to execute it on the specific level, because it's a really hard type of style to pull off, but everyone did. John C. Reilly, Colin Farrell, which I would say I gained new respect for him as an actor in and even his ability to be a comedian. I was rather impressed with his skills. Obviously, it says a lot about marriage and the way we treat relationships, but I think in the second half of the film, which I know a lot of people aren't as big of fans of, what I love about it, it expands that out to show that it's not really simply about marriage or not a relationship, but that you can look at it at a greater context, just regarding how people tend to place themselves into these different categories, these different subcultures, these different, and within those cultures, kind of creating a hierarchy of roles that sometimes make sense, sometimes don't, but then to kind of look at those outside of that group as the enemy or the one who will ultimately be destruction upon you and the way you want to live your life. And I think no message probably is more potent for 2016 than that, considering just the landscape of the world we live in. So I think it ends up being a very timely film as well. So I like it for all those different reasons. I think it's got a lot to say, like I said, and I like Dogtooth a lot. Alps I wasn't a huge fan of, but The Lobster to me, I don't know, I just found it to be the most original film I've seen in some time, and I know it's not for everyone because it's kind of odd and maybe a little bit off-putting, but it kind of just hit me in that sweet spot, so it ended up being my number one of the year.
I did not. I probably came across as if I hated this in Once Upon a Time when it was brought up on social media. I did not actually hate this film, but it is one that I need to rewatch because I missed the ending. So I need to rewatch this one. Unique is a great word for it. I think there is a lot of humor there, and definitely has a unique perspective and a lot of social commentary. So I need to give this one another shot. I do have it in my I think top 40 right now, but it would probably fly up if I got another shot and was actually able to finish it and watch the ending and see how it all kind of came together. Amanda, you saw The Lobster. What was your opinion on that one?
I was actually pretty excited to watch it because it was such a unique premise that it was really intriguing. But then getting into it, I think a lot of like the dialogue and things and like their interactions kind of weirded me out because it was like so awkward that it was like painful at some points. And like the way that people like spoke to each other, it was almost like a Ben Stein all the time. Like there wasn't a lot of emotion up or down. Like it was kind of flat. And it got to the point where I was just like, geez, like it's like a bunch of autonomous like robots just talking to each other, and it kind of got to me. It was a little bit grating, and some of the like especially how like they viewed like sex and things, like it was, I don't know, it was a little odd to me. Like it wasn't like an intimate romantic thing. It was almost like an obligation, and like it was a little weird. So I don't know. I wasn't a big fan.
I think, like Dan said, it's not necessarily for everyone, but I think there is a lot there. It's another one of those that has a lot of layers you can peel back and kind of debate and delve into a little bit and dissect for yourself or with somebody else. I think there's a lot to discuss with The Lobster. Dan, you want to go through any of the honorable mentions or films that just missed getting in your top 10 real quickly?
Sure. So I'll just go through like my 11 to 20 real quick. So 11, I had Nocturnal Animals. I really wanted to find a spot for that, but I couldn't. Hell or High Water, as Kevin mentioned. Probably maybe best crime film of the year. I don't know. A lot like there. Sing Street, another coming of age film. I forgot when I said Zootopia was the second best animated film. This one I recently watched and I put ahead of it, and it's The Little Prince, which I kind of just threw that on, not thinking much of it, and quite the movie.
I
Amazing.
think both of us would agree with you on that, and I also just forgot about that when I was talking about art, because I was thinking just big budget or theater visits. But Amanda and I both had Little Prince probably as our number two. I don't want to speak for her, but we put that on the same type of thing. Like I'd been wanting to watch it for a while because I'd heard about it, and we put it on, and that did some amazing both visual, voice work, and just all the storytelling all the way across. I was very impressed with that.
Yeah. 15, The Witch, then Civil War, Everybody Wants Some. Although I was disappointed with Jeff Nichols' Midnight Special, I was that kind of washed away because I loved Loving that he did this year, which I kind of forgot was coming out until recently, and I enjoyed that a lot. Joel Edgerton and I forget the actress's name, apologize, but both were fantastic. Like that. Yeah, and lastly for number 20, Morris from America. I love that movie. Again, another coming of age movie. I love Craig Robinson, and the actor was just an amazing dad in that movie, and I just love that relationship that they had with his co-star. It was Marquise Christmas. Similar to that of Hunt for Wilder People, he's not necessarily giving you this powerhouse emotional performance, but he just seems like a real kid in a kind of crazy situation. So,
absolutely, I had that one fairly high too. I just going through my 11 through 20 quickly. I had Arrival at 11, then I had Loving at number 12, definitely the better of the two Jeff Nichols films this year. Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, I'll throw in there, even though it probably would be higher on like a personal favorite list. I'm not going to stop championing the film Remember, even though I guess it had a very brief festival release in 2015. But Christopher Plummer is amazing, and I just like that film a lot more than anybody else did. So I'll keep championing that. Captain America: Civil War, The Light Between Oceans, like Amanda had. I found Swiss Army Man making it into my top 20 just for complete bizarre and uniqueness and some stuff to kind of delve into with that one. Sing Street I also had in my top 20. Magnificent Seven eked in there, as well as The Girl on the Train. So a lot of them that you guys had brought up. Amanda, what about any that just missed your list?
Quite a few of my 11 through 20 have already been brought up, so I'll just touch on the ones that haven't. Passengers I really, really enjoyed. A little bit predictable, but I still thought it was kind of a unique story. The Conjuring 2 I thought was pretty freaking solid. Sully, I enjoyed that a lot more than I thought I did, and it was a great telling of that story.
Don't say it.
And I will. Batman vs. Superman is definitely on here a little bit. I enjoyed it. I don't care if anybody else didn't. Matt, you're still my boy, but I freaking loved it. Not enough for the top 10 though, so don't freak out. But also Lights Out, super awesome horror movie with some great shots in it.
All right, Matt, what two films just missed your list?
Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad.
The only other two that was the journey was to try to make sure that those didn't make your top 10. So we accomplished that.
Seriously considered making Rogue One on there twice because I saw it twice in theaters. But I luckily managed to get the day off of work and took that time to watch two more movies.
I like the dedication to make sure that those were not on your list. All right, so those are all of our favorite films of the year, minus obviously some of those that we said that we just haven't quite caught up with yet. You're going to have to let us know what you think of our picks. Which Cinema Geek do you most line up with? And overall, what was your favorite film of 2016? Those are the two things that we want to know. So go to the website, geekcastradio.com, find this episode post, and click on the comments section there and let us know which one you lined up with. What was your number one? If you don't want to go to the website, then go ahead and shoot us a tweet. We're at Cinema Geekcast, and we will all get that. We get the notifications for that, all four of us, and any of us can respond to that. So we would love to hear what your take is on that. If you want to individually comment to what somebody said during one of the reveals or further a discussion with any of us individually, you can do that as well on Twitter. Amanda, how would somebody keep the discussion going with you?
At Hard Candy Mandy, eyes, no eyes.
Dan, what's your Twitter?
And Movie Revolt.
Matt, how about you?
I am at Fridley Scent.
And I am at Optimus Solo. Like we teased last week, don't stop listening because we got some more fun episodes coming up as we kind of turn the page to 2017. Next week we'll be doing our box office predictions, which will start with a look back at the box office predictions from 2015, and I am ecstatic to go over that because I have all of it. I've done all the work. I have all of our picks and how they turned out, and I can't wait to see your guys' reaction when we go over that, as well as obviously make our box office predictions for 2017. 2 weeks out, we have our most anticipated films of 2017, which is by far my favorite record of the year, I think. So that's what we have coming up next. Let us know what you think about all these episodes and what you'd like to see us change or keep the same as we also get back into our other series once we round out the 2016-2017 preview, and we'll get back to some more video game film talk, even though it might be begrudgingly. And on a more happy note, we will get back into the Hayao Miyazaki spotlight, as well as continuing our trek to reveal our top 100 personal favorite films of all time. We're about at the halfway mark with that. So lots of content coming up in the beginning of the year while you go through the doldrums of January and February theater films. But until next time, this has been the Cinema Geeks.